Hello everyone, welcome to another fresh morning. I am Soumya Nayak, Asst Professor in Mechanical Department at At-Vedang Institute of Technology. Today I am going to discuss about the gear ratio, which I told you that in the chapter of the gear, the main important concept, that is the gear ratio, which I discussed in this chapter. The complete gear ratio and fundamental in it, what is gear, I already discussed. What is the importance of gear ratio, what is gear ratio, what is the difference between the speed and torque, how it is functioned. Okay, the details about the fundamental things of the gear and the derivations, the designs of gears will be discussed by the Soumya Mohanty in the machine design class. But now I am going to discuss about the fundamental things, how to find out the gear ratio, what is the importance of gear ratio, and how it is going to get implemented in the automobiles. First of all, the drive and driven part, speed and torque. Okay, drive, this is only a pinion. Okay, this is one pinion, it is another pinion, the size is different, but the main thing over here is that one is drive, another is driven. Okay, drive means when the power or the torque come to the fast gear. Okay, for example, अगर इंजन से पहला पावर और टॉर्क पहले एक पिनियन को आ रहा है, कोई भी पिनियन को, उसको ड्राइव कहेंगे. सिंपल. ड्राइव मतलब पहला जो चलता है उसके द्वारा जो चलेगा उसको ड्रिवन कहेंगे. ओके, तो फास्ट वी आर गेटिंग द सोर्स ऑफ पावर और टॉर्क फ्रॉम द सोर्स पार्ट. द फास्ट थिंग्स और फास्ट पिनियन व्हिच रोटेट इज नोन एज ड्राइव. ओके, the another pinion which get connected with drive by means of the drive force is going to get rotated is known as driven. It is not compulsory that it will the drive and it will the driven. If in the arrangement the power will be produced and it will come fast to this bigger pinion, and it will regarded as the drive pinion, and then the smaller pinion will known as driven. So first of all, clear about what is drive and what is driven. The fast power, the fast pinion which rotate, or simple you can able to understand the input pinion. The input pinion is a drive pinion. The output pinion is a driven pinion. The output power we are getting from the driven pinion, and the input power we are getting from the drive pinion. The input power from the engine, and driven means output power to the rear axle or to the wheel. So it is not compulsory that this will be the drive and this will also driven. No. Okay, if the power will come to this bigger wheel, then it will change the name, that it will be considered to as drive, and the smaller pinion will be known as driven. That is not a compulsory that anything will go for drive or driven. By according to the means of input power and the output power, we can able to regard it the drive and driven part. Now there is a speed and torque. The speed and torque in the gear, in the gear ratio of the gear, they are completely inversely proportional. Okay, one is in the upward direction, another is downward direction. That means if speed will increase, the torque will decreases or reduce. Means the point or the gear, at point when we are going to get the higher speed, at that moment in that gear we are going to getting the lower torque. Okay, that is for example the topmost gear. Okay, in top gear what's happened? In top gear what's happened? Speed will more, torque will less. The speed will more, the torque will very less. Okay, it is from top gear. But at the fast gear or lower gear, at the lower gear, we are getting speed is less, but torque is very high. Okay, that's the only reason why speed and torque are inversely proportional. Okay, so how it is happened? I already was discussed in the gear chapter. In top gear, what's happened? The larger pinion will be rotated to smaller pinion. That means what? The input will be the larger part. input larger part means this, in this diagram, in this figure, the drive is a very smaller pinion, the driven is a larger pinion, a larger gear. So if the smaller pinion will rotate the larger pinion, or larger pinion will be get output, smaller pinion getting input, at that time what happened? Speed reduces. It is known as lower gear system. This diagram is for lower gear system. Okay, lower gear system means what? Here the speed will reduce because the smaller pinion is input, the larger pinion is the output. In this arrangement, what happened? In the output part, we are getting very low speed, but we are getting very high torque. High torque means the power is very high. We can able to carry the large amount of weight. We can able to ride the inclined positions or inclined road conditions. When there is the force will required more, at that time we are required to drive the vehicle in a lower gear. Okay, but just opposite it. If just change the opposite means, if this driven will be drive gear and this drive will be the driven gear. Okay, if this driven will be the drive gear and drive will be the driven gear, then what's happened? It will go for top gear. Top gear, what's happened? Top gear speed is very high because the input will going to the input. Now you just assume the input is the larger pinion. The input is the drive. The larger pinion is drive. The smaller pinion is a driven part. So now what's happened? Input energy is in the larger pinion. It will rotate, and it will rotate to output will be the smaller pinion. That means what? The speed will be increases, but torque will be very, very low. So when we require the larger number of speed to move the vehicle with more than 100 or 120 km per hour, we never require at that time force. Okay, lot of force is not required. Okay, but when we are requiring, the force will be high because or the load is very high. At that time, low gear. When the speed is very high, we require the top gear. It was already discussed, okay, before in the classes. So now the main concept is, what do you mean by the gear ratio, and why this concept is comes, and what is the importance of gear ratio in the gear arrangement and gear design. Simple, the gear ratio means anything you can take about. Okay, simple, the gear ratio formula is speed of drive or speed of drive gear. Okay, speed of drive means speed of drive, matlab drive gear. Okay, speed of drive to that speed of driven. Speed of driven gear. That also equal to just opposite size of the driven, to that of size of drive gear. Okay, this is the complete formula of, this formula is complete formula of gear ratio. It is speed of the drive, the speed of the driven gear, then that is equal to size of the driven gear to that of size of the drive gear. If you recognize by means of symbolized, the ratio is equal to, take the speed of the drive is N1, take the speed of the driven gear is N2, that is also equal to size of the driven gear, that is number of teeth. Size of the driven gear means number of teeth. Okay, that is T2 by size of the drive gear is T1. That means what happened? One will include the input part. One means what? The input. Okay, one means the input, that is drive. Input, that is drive gear, and 2 means output. That is driven. That is driven gear. Okay. So this formula is important to get out the gear ratio. And why it is important to design a gear? Because the amount of rotation of the drive or driven gear, means input or output gear, it depend upon this gear ratio. Okay, I will going to discuss about in the further that how this gear ratio will be important to find out the amount of rotation of the gear with respect to the input to the output rotation of the gear in the design. Okay, now I just erase this below part because the formula is the upper part. How to get out the speed and how to get out the torque, there is all the formula that is dependent upon each other. So over here we are going to getting the ratio, but in this ratio how to find out the torque? Okay, there is another formula to getting the torque. Okay, that is dependent and similar to this equation, that is torque T is equal to the ratio that you are getting into torque output. Okay, torque in R is a ratio. R means this ratio, this gear ratio R. Torque in into torque output, or you can able to write over here T1 is equal to R into T2. Okay, that means suppose torque T drive gear is equal to ratio is R into T torque driven. So this is a last formula, or we can able to write this formula for better simple understanding. T1 is equal to R into T2. T1 is equal to R into T2. R is this ratio we are going to get. After getting the ratio, we are putting over here to getting the T1. If you know the value of T2, or if you know the value of T1, we are going to get the T2. Okay. So there is only two formula which is most important over here. One is ratio to find out. Another one formula is to torque. How to find out the torque? That is T1 is equal to R into T2. These two formula will be play a very important role in the further. T1 is equal to R into T2. So now let's take one example over here. Let's this drive is a smaller part or smaller gear, and this driven is a larger pinion or larger gear. Okay. Similarly over here, this one is driven gear and this one is a drive gear. Just changes. Okay. यहाँ पे देखो, यहाँ पे ड्राइव गियर छोटा है, ड्रिवन गियर बड़ा है. यहाँ पे देखो ड्रिवन गियर बड़ा है. ओके, ये भी ये ड्रिवन गियर छोटा है, यहाँ पे ड्रिवन गियर छोटा लिखा गया है और ड्राइव गियर बड़ा है, मतलब जस्ट ऑपोजिट. ओके, जस्ट ऑपोजिट टू दिस. दैट मीन्स व्हाट हैपन, यहाँ पे अगर ये इनपुट है और यू आर गेटिंग द आउटपुट, you will getting torque is high over here. That means we are getting the top fast gear. Here you are going to getting the topmost gear, or speed will be increases over here in this arrangement. So let's take the example about this this fast figure. Drive is very smaller pinion, driven is largest pinion. Let's take one example. Let's take the teeth. Okay, let's take the teeth. Let's take the teeth of, or number of teeth. Okay, number of teeth of this drive, number of teeth of this drive. Okay, number of teeth of this drive gear, let's take is equal to 10, and this number of teeth of driven gear, teeth means number of teeth. Okay, driven gear, इज इक्वल टू 20. तो व्हाट डू मीन बाय फास्ट टीथ? ओके, टीथ का मतलब क्या है? ओके, तो टीथ ऑफ ड्राइव और टीथ ऑफ ड्रिवन और टीथ ऑफ द गियर. ओके, तो प्रोजेक्शन पार्ट. ओके, यहाँ पे जो प्रोजेक्शन पार्ट है ना, जो स्लॉट्स वगैरह है यहाँ पे, इसको टीथ कहते हैं. मतलब अगर मैं 10 लिखा हूं तो ये जो स्लॉट है ना 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, इसको तुम कैलकुलेट करोगे तो वो 10 आना चाहिए. ओके, लेकिन हम अज्यूम किए हैं लेट 10 लेके, लेकिन ये डिजाइन में ज्यादा दिया गया है, तो इसका मतलब 10 है. मतलब ये जो ड्राइव का गियर है उसका जो टीथ है, जो स्लॉट है, वो 10 नंबर का स्लॉट है. टीथ ऑफ ड्रिवन गियर मतलब ये जो बड़ा वाला चीज है, तो बड़ा वाला ड्रिवन गियर है, उसका जो स्लॉट को काउंट करोगे तो वो 20 होना चाहिए. इस फिगर में नहीं है, कंफ्यूज मत होना. ओके, इस फिगर में ये जो 10 और 20 वैल्यू नहीं है. फॉर एज्यूमेशंस आई एम जस्ट टेकिंग द 10 एंड 20. ओके, 10 एंड 20 होने का मतलब ये है कि जब तुम डिजाइन करोगे, व्हेन यू गोइंग टू डिजाइन द गियर, एट दैट टाइम द टीथ और द स्लॉट ऑफ द गियर शुड बी 10 ऑफ द ड्राइव एंड शुड बी 20 इन द ड्रिवन. ओके, दैट इज द beauty of this gear ratio. You can never change the amount of value that designed in the gear ratio. According to this gear ratio, you are bound, you are mandatory to develop or design a gear. Next, what will happen? We are going to getting the ratio. Okay, first of all, going to getting the ratio. So R is equal to what? Here N1 by N2 is not given, means speed we do not know. Okay, speed we do not know. स्पीड ऑल्सो डोंट गिवन ओवर हियर. ओके, स्पीड तो तब पता चलेगा ना जब गाड़ी में ये फिट होगा. ओके, तो गाड़ी में फिट नहीं हुआ है तो टीथ तो हम जान सकते हैं डिजाइन करके, इतना टीथ हम लगाएंगे बाय मींस ऑफ आवर अजम्पशन. तो देखेंगे होता क्या है. लेट्स टेक T2. T2 क्या है? T2 आउट है. T2 मतलब ड्रिवन है, तो ये ड्राइव है तो 1 है, तो ड्रिवन है तो ये 2 है. तो अब आ गया T2. T2 मतलब ये ड्रिवन पार्ट का टीथ कितना है? 20 है. तो T2 बाई T1 इज इक्वल टू T2 कितना है? T2 20 है. ओके, T2 इज 20 divided by T1. T1 is 10. That means ratio is how much? Ratio is 2:1. Okay, so ratio is coming 2:1. What do you mean by this 2:1? So you know that 2 means what? तो ऊपर में 2 है और नीचे में 1 है. दैट मीन्स ऊपर में ड्रिवन है, ड्रिवन गियर का, ड्रिवन बाय ड्राइव, रेशियो इज 2 by 1, that is 2:1. Okay, so what do you mean by fast? Okay, अब ये मत समझ लेना कि ये जो ड्रिवन है वो 2:1, इसका मतलब नहीं अगर ये 2 बार पहले इनपुट कहाँ आ रहा है, पहले इनपुट ड्राइव को आ रहा है. फर्स्ट द इनपुट एनर्जी विल बी कम टू द ड्राइव और इनपुट पावर कम टू ड्राइव. दैट मीन्स इन दिस अरेंजमेंट व्हाट्स हैपन, फर्स्ट द ड्राइव गियर विल बी रोटेट, first the drive gear will be rotated, then the driven gear will be rotated by means of this drive gear. Okay, so what happened? First of all, this drive gear rotating, then the driven gear will rotate. So here what happened? The drive gear will be rotated 2 times, then the driven gear rotated 1 times. Driven is 2, drive is 1. So what do you mean by this? अगर वो ये जो ड्राइव है ना वो 2 बार कंप्लीट रोटेशन करेगा, इसका मतलब क्या समझो. के इट इज नॉट लाइक कि ड्रिवन 2 है तो 2 और ड्राइव 1 है तो 1. ओके, दैट मीन्स ड्राइव 1 एंड ड्रिवन 2. दैट मीन्स ड्राइव एक बार कंप्लीट रोटेशन करेगा. द कंप्लीट रोटेशन ऑफ द ड्राइव गियर इन हिज ओन रोटेशनल एक्सिस is, it is not equal to driven, it is going to get half of the driven. So that means what? Complete rotation of the 2 of the driven gears. इसका मतलब ड्राइव अगर 2 बार घूम रहा है तो ड्रिवन 1 बार घूमेगा. ओके, तो यहां इस तरह पढ़ो, मतलब थोड़ा क्रॉस करके पढ़ो इस तरह समझने के लिए. फॉर द फिजिबल अंडरस्टैंडिंग, ड्राइव गियर अगर 2 बार घूम रहा है, okay, when the drive gear complete rotate 2 times at that time the driven gear will be rotated completely one. अगर ड्राइव गियर अपने ही एक्सिस में 2 बार कंप्लीट रोटेशन करेगा तो ड्रिवन गियर एक बार अपने एक्सिस में रोटेट कर रहा है. तो दिस इज द ब्यूटी ऑफ दिस गियर रेशियो. अब तुम निकाल सकते हो, मतलब अगर मैं 10 टीथ ड्राइव में लूंगा और टीथ ऑफ ड्रिवन अगर 20 लूंगा तो मैं पा लिया कि अगर ड्राइव 2 बार घूम रहा है तो ड्रिवन एक बार घूमेगा. ओके, इट इज द 2:1 रेशियो. So this is the feasibility fast problem और type of problem. यहाँ पे स्पीड नहीं दिया गया है. ओके, टॉर्क अगर दिया जाता, सपोज फॉर एग्जांपल मे बी लिख लो, सपोज T1 अगर टॉर्क दिया जाता, लेट्स टेक, अगर टॉर्क दिया जाता कि मे बी टेक सपोज 20 न्यूटन मीटर, मे बी लेट एज्यूम 20 न्यूटन मीटर. अगर टॉर्क यहाँ पे 20 न्यूटन मीटर दिया गया है ड्राइव में, तो जो T2 आएगा और T2 जो आने वाला है T2 और T1 इज इक्वल टू R इंटू T2. ओके, तो R इज व्हाट? R इज 2:1 means 2. So T1 is 20. So T1 is 20 divided by, okay, T1 is 20 divided by 1. Divided by R is how much? R is 2. You are getting 10 Newton meter in the part of T2. Okay, so what you are getting? It T1 20 Newton meter, T2 you are getting 10 Newton meter. So it is clear that torque is reducing. In the output, torque is reducing. Okay, in output, torque is reducing. So in T1 is 20, T2 is 10, output torque is reducing and the speed increasing. Okay, so this is the complete formula, R N1 N2 by T2 T1, T1 is equal to R into T2, all about the drive and driven part, how to find out the torque, how to find out the number of teeth or size of the gear, the number of rotation and speed. In the next class, further problems I will discuss about the changing of the speed, how to find out by means of speed. There is other arrangement of the gear are there. Okay, you know, other arrangement of gear, that means simple train, compound train, and when two or number of gears are arranged, at that time how to find out the gear ratio. And also for this gear, okay, that means driven gear and connected to the driven gear, अगर इसका just opposite है तो how to find out, and what is the difference between this and how we can going to about design that. We are going to getting the gear ratio in the find in the next class. Okay, up to it. Thank you very much. In the next class, I am going to discuss about certain numericals upon it.